continuing with Shark Nation Radio Backlash's 4th of July coverage. Let's go over to Israel and talk to our friend Eliyokim Cohen, which we're in the habit of doing. He publishes Jews News and does the What the Fuck's Dean show on Facebook. And before I start, we know what happened July 4th. Let me do some counting here. 241 years ago. But something also happened 41 years ago that's more related to Israel than the Founding Fathers, though the Founding Fathers certainly were inspired by the stories of the Israelites. Eliyokim, I gave you a good intro. Let's just tell them what happened on July 4th, 1976. I hope you know this, by the way.
Oh, we talk about Entebbe.
Yes.
Oh, man. The greatest, most daring commando raid in world history. Wow. Still has an indelible impression on Israelis. It's probably one of our biggest sources of pride.
People mention
what went in behind it, just dressing up as foreign.
Wait, give the background. Give the background. You got to give the background first for people.
Oh, so Palestinian terrorists basically hijacked a plane and they took it to Uganda, and they were holding all I can't remember how many hostages. I think there was over 100, maybe 80, something like that, and Israel basically did the most daring raid ever. They flew into Uganda. They pretended they were the procession of, the leader Idi Amin. And they had his exact knockoff Mercedes, and commandos went in and basically rescued these hostages. I mean, it was. You remember the pictures in Israel when they got back, and the hostages are, they're met at the airport, and there's all the dancing and celebrating, and I mean even the countries in the world that don't like Israel were just stunned.
Which is like every country, yeah.
Yeah, I mean just the sheer audacity of the raid and that it was successful. I mean this was. I encourage you, if you don't know what we're talking about, to Google it. I mean it was just sort of mind blowing, but. Yeah, happy 4th of July, Adam.
Yeah, and let me just see if there's anything else I need to mention. That if people want to Google it, Entebbe, a couple movies related. I can't remember. Operation something. Was it Thunderbolt? Is that the name of it?
Yeah. The movies on it are actually really good. And our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, his brother was the only Israeli soldier that was actually killed in this raid. So actually, it was cool today. Netanyahu, the biggest aircraft carrier in the world is in Israel right now, the George Bush.
Oh yeah.
And and Netanyahu went on to the aircraft carrier today to give a happy 4th of July speech, and it was really cool seeing him. I feel like foreign military men have a much higher regard for our Prime Minister than maybe some other people do, because he was an elite commando. I mean, he actually rescued people in another raid a few years later, but it was nice seeing him on the ship today. No matter what I think of anything politically,
and you're not a huge
about
fan.
him. I mean,
coming from the right.
Seeing him, I mean, it was just nice seeing him on the aircraft carrier with American troops, and they were really happy to have him. And it's nice that our two countries are sort of back where we should be after an 8-year hiatus. So this is the first 4th of July that many Israelis actually probably care about in the last 8 years. So.
Let me ask you a question, and before we get to, obviously you're American-born, but do they mark the anniversary of the Entebbe raid on an annual basis? I know last year was a big deal because it was the 40th anniversary, but is there anything that's done on a yearly basis? Like, will people is it just another day, or do they note that it's July 4th?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the news, and it's, every year they relive, you can see all the YouTube videos on Facebook, and there's stuff talked about in the media. On like a 40th or a 50th, I'm sure there's a little bit more frenzy about it. But it's basically one of the, that and the kidnapping of Adolf Eichmann are basically the two, besides the 6-Day War or whatever, these are the two actual missions that Israelis really hang their hats on. And I mean, they're basically taught in numerous war colleges around the world. I mean, this was sheer audacity what we did, and it worked. I mean, it was quite amazing. So,
I like the fact, by the way, that you refer to it as a kidnapping, no question about it. People be like, oh, that's sort of a negative term, like something you'd hear about Israel on CNN or MSNBC. But I guess that's the term that's used. Like, hey, it's Eichmann. Why not kidnap
Yeah.
him and try him? And
Yeah, I mean, we kidnapped him. I mean, and not only that, they're pretty proud of saying that they kidnapped him. I mean, they went into Argentina and basically just grabbed this guy out of his home and brought in, drugged him, and then brought him back to Israel.
Yeah, Eichmann must have been a little surprised by that.
Yeah.
But that was not July 4th, so we'll talk about that another time.
Right.
There was something else I wanted to mention. I don't remember what it was. Okay, July 4th. What does American do who's living over in Israel to observe July 4th?
Not much. I mean, it's not like
you're Israeli now, of course.
Today. Right. No, I mean, in America, like, even if you're not so gung-ho for July 4th, it's usually built into a weekend. So,
right.
You take an extra long vacation or whatever. For me, my parents' anniversary is the 5th, so that's the last 7 years since I've been here. I don't even really think about July 4th. I just, know that it's close to my parents' anniversary and I have to make a phone call. So, but I think you'll see in the next few years, not that there's going to be celebrations here, but there was a lot of anti-America sentiment the last 8 years. I mean, that's pretty undeniable. Mm-hmm. And, when Trump came a few months ago, it was huge support for him. And, I mean, there's only 2 countries in the world that view Trump more favorably than Obama. That was just released from that Pew poll, and that is Russia and Israel. So mm-hmm. It's there's definitely a lot more favorable American sentiment this year than there was last year. So,
I do remember.
Yeah, there's really not much. There's not much here for July 4th. Just Americans usually go to the bar, and it's one extra day to get drunk. That's so.
How nice. Hey, people will be doing that here. I remembered what I wanted to say about Entebbe. The raid is, I mean, there are good movies on it, but Herman Wouk, who's 102 years old, still going, still writing, still very observantly Jewish in California. His two-part epic, The Hope and the Glory, near the end of The Glory, and the whole series is about Israel's first, 4 decades or so, or 3 decades.
Yeah.
And he does describe the raid, and I want to point out Herman Wouk. I use any opportunity to discuss him because I'm a big fan. There was an interview of him just a couple days ago on 60 Minutes on CBS that people may want to look at. I think there was a follow-up thing on the Powerline blog, so I just want to give people a chance to know that. Okay, now looking at non-July 4th stuff. You posted, it's not something that people found, it wasn't at jewsnews.co.il, but Israel is expanding building in Jerusalem, and you made sure to repost that one. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, under Obama, he basically said to Netanyahu on his first visit to America, not one brick, meaning, there's the green line in Israel, which basically delineates the old line between Israel and Jordan. When Jordan basically occupied the eastern part of Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, which the world knows as the West Bank, when Israel won basically 2 wars, we took that land over. So we're the only country in the world that's ever won a war and has been basically told to give back everything that we won, which we're not doing. So under Obama, he basically demanded that Netanyahu freeze construction over the Green Line, meaning to the east of the Green Line. So it's the eastern part of Jerusalem and what's dubbed the West Bank. And under Trump, we've started building a little bit more, but now there's been a big backlash because we're not building enough. I mean, Netanyahu had an excuse for 8 years. He could say, I'm getting pressure from Obama, but he's not getting pressure from Trump now. So, the right wing in Israel, which has the control, is saying, bro, it's time to build. So this week they're going to approve a few different plans, and the most important one is there's a neighborhood, mostly Arab. It's called Sheikh Jarrah. The Jews call it the Shimon HaTzadik neighborhood. It's where one of our famous rabbis is buried. And it's actually Jewish-owned property. When the Jordanians took over, they expelled the Jews. But Jews actually have the deeds to the land. And the government now is finally approving projects. They're going to build a yeshiva there, 13 different apartment buildings. So more and more Jews are going into the area. And that, it's a little-known thing that's happening in Israel, but there's a huge push to purchase land and property from Arabs, many of whom don't want to be in Israel. They'd much rather be in Canada or Germany where they can run wild.
And Israel's fine with that.
And that's happening. So there's a lot of different properties in Israel, numerous places which are being bought up by Jews. And the sad part that no one really ever talks about is these people literally leave under the cover of darkness. Like they
Mm-hmm.
will give the deed to the Jewish purchaser, and then within like 3 hours they are at Ben Gurion Airport, never to return again, because if Arabs find out that they sold property to Jews, they literally kill them. I mean, it's happened numerous times in this country. They literally kill these people for selling land to Jews. Yeah, I mean, you can read about this. You can Google it. I mean,
this is fascinating,
happened numerous times.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just, it just goes to show when you hear the term like, oh, if Israel just gives back land for peace. I mean, if you're getting killed for literally a real estate transaction to a Jew, that's a much deeper problem than just, oh, we think you're occupying our land. They hate us. I mean, this should be obvious by now. But they literally kill their own people.
I wonder, though, sometimes if there, and we've talked about this before, if there is a certain respect, they officially hate the Jews, but I'm guessing that underneath there's a lot of respect for them, and I'm of the belief that a lot of Muslims don't really believe in it, but they're afraid of the pressure, like what you say, that they'll be killed if they, if they ever express it. Here they can quietly leave, get out of there, even though they probably rather live under Israelis than soft Westerners, would be my guess.
Yeah,
it's a good way for them to sort of start a new life, just get away from this crap. Maybe their son will marry a German girl, and they'll sort of be a little bit further removed from all this Islamic garbage. I mean, really. I mean,
look,
you know Arabs.
Yeah, I think I told you once when I go to this hotel for Shabbat every week. It's a nice hotel in Jerusalem. They have a really good Shabbat meal. So I look forward to that every week. But it's mostly all Arab, workers, because Jews can't work on Shabbat. So, I've become friendly with a lot of the waiters and the maitre d' and whatever. So one time the maitre d' looked really dejected, and I said to him, Waleed, what's wrong? And he said, oh, I've only worked 3 days this week because of all the terror attacks. And, he was basically cursing out his own people. But, obviously the Jews are affected. We're the ones getting stabbed. But people don't realize that they're destroying the Arabs in this country live on tourism.
Mm-hmm.
When Jews aren't coming to Israel and, Asians aren't flocking to Israel, they're losing money, and for the average non-terrorist Muslim, this bothers them, and that's a little known fact of this country that we don't really do a good enough job of spreading. That's why I like getting these stories out. Is there are good Muslims out there, and they lose out.
They just don't tend to believe that much in the Quran. They tend to just sort of do their thing and get away with not get away with. But just we'll pay lip service to it. But we're not into this. We're into like our own lives. That's my impression.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's tons of secular Jews in the world. My best friend in America is a secular Muslim, and he's even said to me when we were driving to this golf course in New Jersey, and he said to me, "Has there ever been a more depraved group of people than Muslims?" And this guy's Muslim. His family's father's pretty devout, but also a super nice guy. And I said to him, "No, I mean, it's just nice to hear him actually be able to admit this. There's a deep, troubling, defect in their culture."
Wow.
And
you want to go biblically.
It's spreading.
There is a more depraved group. It's the Edomites, that's the descendants of Rome, who quietly act like they're civilized. At least the Muslims and the Arabs basically wear their hearts on their sleeves, aren't necessarily lying to you. It's like it's the Europeans.
I'll give them that.
The Europeans who are just happy that the Muslims and Arabs or whoever are doing their dirty work. That's probably a little more depraved when you think about it.
Well, I think that's why you see basically them just being welcomed in with open arms.
Right.
And in the end, they have a common enemy. I mean, they don't like the Jewish people. I mean, it's in the Torah. It's our entire Jewish history. And, the fact that these Christian mayors of these cities in Europe, like Berlin and whatever, are letting these Hezbollah, Al-Quds Day marches go on, basically it just proves exactly what you said. They're just, they're now the happy enablers, but in the end they're going to end up, they're now feeling the brunt of what Israel has experienced.
That said, there's not too much value if your real goal is to kill Jews, bringing them into places like Sweden or Malmo, Sweden, because there's no real Jewish community there anymore to harass.
Yeah, and I mean, look, speaking of that, one of the topics on my show today was that Germany just basically said yesterday in one of their courts that Sharia patrol is not illegal. Like, they are sanctioning
Yep.
Sharia patrol. I mean, these people literally are, like, beating the hell out of Western women for wearing a miniskirt on the street. And in some of these areas, they make up, like, 1% of the population. I mean, imagine, like, leaving a bar at night with your girlfriend, and Mahmoud literally beats the hell out of you for having a beer in your hand in your own city. I mean, you know, this could be Boston next. It could be Philly. I mean, it's going everywhere. And
Philly is, oh man, I went to a bar there. That's about, like, you go to a bar and just the homeless people begging for you, like in a downtown area where there's a big street of bars. It's like one after another. I mean, it's not Muslims, but it's just, whoa. There's something about Philly, Center City, Philly on Thursday night. But I digress. You know, I do want to make another point, and I understand what you were saying there. You know, the thing that I think in the back of my mind, as you see so much Muslim emigration from the Middle East, like close to Israel, to Europe and the U.S. and, you know, Europe, a lot of those countries are historically enemies of Israel. There's a certain irony that all these young men of fighting age are there leaving this Israel's area and going to the West everywhere in the world, because that's just that many fewer fighting men within a couple 100 miles of Israel that Israel has to deal with. I mean, no one talks about that, but the reality is you're wondering if, like, the problems Israel has had to deal with are being reduced in their immediate vicinity. Obviously, Iran's another problem. Well, they're starting to kill each other too, Sunni versus Shiite. And just going to the rest of the world. You know what? The rest of the world's so happy Israel had to deal with this crap. Like, okay, let them deal with these people, and we're just going to remove from Israel. I mean, don't you ever think about that sometimes?
No, I do. It's like as an Alabama fan, when Auburn and Tennessee play, you basically just hope that the stadium crumble. I mean, that's the old joke. I mean, when people always ask me, who are you rooting for between ISIS and Hezbollah? I'm like, deaths. What do you mean, who am I rooting for? Who the frick cares? Kill as many as you can. There's no sides they were taking, but you're right. And look, there's a few Eastern European leaders, like the head of the leader of Poland, and especially the leader of the Czech Republic.
And Hungary.
Hungary is Orbach. That guy's amazing. These people are basically saying every single refugee is between 16 and 40 single males. That's not what refugees are. I mean, you remember like watching videos on refugees growing up, and it was like, you know, a mother with like 94 kids around her? No, in Europe now, it's a 22-year-old angry Muslim with an iPhone and Nike shoes getting off a boat with a big smirk on his face because the country he's in right now is so stupid that he can't even believe that he's now getting welfare money and he doesn't have to work. We talked about that last week. 74% of Muslim refugees in Germany, the German government just said, we'll never, ever try to find work. They're going to continue to be on the government peat for life. And you're right. It's like people are just clearing out of the Middle East.
To me, it's downright biblical. I mean, it's like literally, and Germany's getting it the worst. I don't know where Sweden fits in, honestly. Sweden's getting it pretty bad, and it's not like they even fought in World War II. But Germany, I mean, it's downright biblical to me. Like, God has a sense of humor almost. Obviously, the younger Germans are paying the price for what people who are now in their 90s did. But you just can't believe it. It's like all Israel's enemies are clearing from away from Israel. Not all. I'm using hyperbole.
Yeah, no, and what you're saying was actually this Italian journalist, I think it was about a year ago, Germany ran out of, I think we talked about it on the show one time, Germany ran out of housing for these refugees. So they started housing them at the Dachau concentration camp museum.
Yep.
So this Italian journalist said, Europe, wake the hell up. Do you not see that this is our punishment? I mean, they're literally staying at concentration camp memorials. God is like, this is God's curse for us. Wake up. And, you know, no one listened to him. But I thought that for a non-Jewish Italian to basically see exactly what we're seeing, I mean, you know, we have a biblical background. This is just part of Nida Keneged Nida, measure for measure. It's part of Judaism. But for this Italian guy to basically sum it all up, I thought it was just mind-blowing, and nobody listened to him.
Yeah. I saw something else. Okay, moving away from Israel, it is July 4th. We always come back to Israel and the Jews. So be it. People get to know what's up on Backlash on Shark Nation Radio with that anyhow. Okay, we have our biases. I don't think it bothers most of our audience, especially a lot of non-Jews are right here with me, and they love this stuff. Just a couple other things you posted recently. You liked what President Trump said about where our liberty comes from, and that's definitely July 4th appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, look, after 8 years of a so-called Christian who basically slobbered over Islam in every speech or whatever, to have the president say, ever since the Declaration of Independence was signed, America has affirmed that our rights and liberties and power comes from God. I mean, that's a very powerful. It's not the first time he's done that. I mean, he did it at his inaugural address. He's done it a few other times. Trump's, he might not be, going to church every day and whatever, but he's a very spiritual guy, and he gives credit where credit is due. And obviously as an Orthodox Jew, hearing basically the leader of the free world acknowledge God and acknowledge Trump's an egomaniac, but acknowledging his smallness compared to God, I think is something that's pretty powerful. And I think that might be one of his, you always wonder why God chooses certain people for certain positions. I mean, Hitler also, to his credit, he also mentioned God a lot. He thought he was a divine, that Hitler was divinely chosen for his purpose. But, all the negative backlash against Trump, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the fact that he stands for everything that liberals hate: religion, barriers, borders. I mean, just that comment today, or maybe it was yesterday, I thought was phenomenal. And thankfully, a lot of the right wing, websites covered it. I think that's extremely important after 8 years of basically crapping on God at the White House. I mean,
July 4th appropriate because God was not forgotten at the events in Philadelphia 241 years ago. Just going through your Facebook page, which I encourage people to look at, either Eliyokim Cohen, Eliyokim, and last name Cohen, or just go to the Jews News Facebook page. But just a few things that you've posted, and jump in whenever you want. You have. Here are the top 5 coolest Israeli military inventions. Anything you want to say about that?
I mean, we're developing laser beams. We have this thing where it's a device that shoots like a projectile at the door and then literally just rips the door off, if you have to charge a house for some reason. We have things that shoot behind walls. I mean, there's one weapon called the skunk, which is just an extremely putrid, noxious liquid that we spray on Muslim rioters that are getting a little too rambunctious. I mean, it's what aren't we coming out with? And we're actually now arming El Al planes with anti-missile devices. Yeah, I mean, people always ask me why I spend $300 more per flight to fly El Al, but A, my pilot is an Israeli Air Force pilot, and B, I've got freaking missiles on. I got missile defense on the plane. And that's something that's a little important. And considering my aunt was hijacked by Hezbollah in 1985.
Wait, what? Pan Am?
Yeah, my aunt was hijacked by Hezbollah on a famous TWA flight.
No kidding.
So flying has never been a happy time in my family. So, it's things like this that just make this country amazing. And, when people always say, oh, but, America gives so much aid to Israel. They don't give any aid to Israel. It's a mutually beneficial. They give us money, so we develop these things, and then America gets the technology. I mean, there's actually an Army, commander in America that listed 10 different ways that Americans benefit from the aid from the money that America gives Israel. It's definitely a two-way street. And I think in the next few years, speaking of July 4th, you'll see a lot more. I mean, the helmets that the American Army wears, there's an Israeli development in there that's keeping them safe. We're basically two countries together, fighting evil. And you're going to see that now with Trump. I mean, what he's doing in Syria and what he's probably going to be doing with North Korea and maybe Iran is pretty amazing.
Do you have a few more minutes?
Things on
I think I'm going to push another guest till tomorrow and just keep you on for another 8-10 minutes if you can. One interesting thought about the Israeli military innovations is I'm just contrasting this to what I've seen just in the last few days that there was a story that there was a lot of criticism of Secretary Mattis over here because they're not doing enough to integrate transgenders into the military.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, we're dealing with that over here, and you guys are inventing the skunk and laser technology over there. I mean, could it be any more obvious which direction different civilizations are going in right now?
Yeah, I mean, look,
I got to move over there.
I read that too, and I was actually that was one of the articles I think we're posting later today. But when your biggest problem in the military is not your enemy, but the gender makeup of your fighting force, I mean that should give Americans pause. I mean that's scary stuff. I mean, Americans are involved in 2 overseas wars. They're fighting in Syria. They have bases probably in 100 different countries. The biggest thing that's on their minds now is trainees in the military. I mean, thankfully Mattis just basically paused that Obama initiative. I mean, it's lunacy. It's militaries are for fighting.
Yep.
It's not a gender exercise. Basically, what they're trying to do in schools and everywhere else. I mean, nothing is safe from this. Nothing is safe from this. I mean, I just did my show today. The Olympic Committee is not even enforcing gender in the 2018.
Are you serious?
Games. Yeah. So in the last Olympics, there were 2 British men who ran as women. I mean, so my point was, imagine these hardworking girls. I mean, I've known some Olympians because my family was always big into track, and my dad was, a marathon runner and a pole vaulter, and my dad actually ran across America. So we were always big into sports, especially the Olympics. It was like the best every 4 years. It was amazing. I mean, these girls work literally 4 years to get to the Olympics. And then because some guy decides he's a girl, she's going to finish in second because this guy's going to win. I mean, Adam, where's the end? It never ends. And now it's encroaching on the military, which used to be like, the all-boys club, which it should be. Mm-hmm. You want to feel safe, don't you? Don't people want to feel safe? Like having these exercises, and Israel's doing it. Israel let in gays, which I mean everyone in Israel.
It's a little different in Israel, though. I think because
for sure.
It reminds me of the South fighting at the end of the Civil War. That well, no, it does because they had people much younger. They had 13, 14-year-olds fighting old men because it's really about defending the country in Israel's case, as opposed to an exercise in employment, which it often is in the American military. Let's face it. I mean, and you're not necessarily defending the homeland to the same extent.
Israel, you have to go. So it's like they're making more accommodations for gay soldiers here, but we haven't even, thank God, and hopefully we don't sniff what this Mattis article is talking about. I mean, Obama's had it in for the military. I mean, besides all the budget cuts and the way that he operated the VA, which was just a disgrace. I mean, 26 American soldiers commit suicide every day. Focus on fighting your enemies, which in a lot of cases are Muslim terrorists, not trying to enlist trannies. I mean, my gosh, just never ends. The stupidity. It's just every day I wake up and
Speaking of
find
stupidity,
these articles. It's just stupidity.
I know, but
I don't know if you saw the thing I posted yesterday about that girl that was wearing the Hezbollah T-shirt.
I was just going to get to that. Well, we're assuming it's a girl. She had pretty narrow shoulders. Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
So there's a good friend of mine on Facebook, Ayman Shalash. She's a Muslim from the UK that's radically pro-Israel and hates Muslims. So he will go to a Syrian, pro-Syria, refugee rally, and he'll wear an Israeli flag. And, I mean, this guy's amazing. He's one of the coolest people ever. So he posted this picture, and I saw it yesterday, and I talked about it on my show today. This girl wore out to dinner with her parents. She's just a pasty white, idiotic Western white chick. And she wore a Hezbollah, the yellow with the green T-shirt out, with her family.
The new Che Guevara.
Yeah, exactly. And her sister said to her, "What's that?" And she wrote, and I quote, "Oh, it's a terrorist organization, LOL." I mean, my gosh, these people need to be just
have their civilizations conquered by the people leaving within 200 miles of Israel. Let's face it.
Yeah, I mean, look, these people also kill. That's what I've never understood about, like, you know, the support for the Muslim refugees is, you know, they're second on the list. All right, they might hate the Jews first, but they have no love lost for white Christian European girls.
Well, post-Christian, I believe, in this case.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just, this is mind-boggling, and this is the future of the world. Like,
well, it's nihilistic.
These are the people that will be the politicians in 10 years.
I don't know about that one, but this is nihilistic, and it just shows the difference between, as David Goldman has written about, Israel and so much of the Western world, not necessarily including Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, etc., that they don't really care about the future that the children that they may or may not have inherit. And then if they lose it, so what? Like, pass the bong. I just want to... I want to get to just one other thing you talked about in your show yesterday. You talked about the Trump tweet and not acting presidential. And just, it was a pretty obvious brainstorm from you, but just, I like the way you put it in terms of Clinton and liberals, and maybe you can just throw in Jay-Z there while we're at it, because we have just a couple minutes left.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, Trump's been just getting bashed for not acting presidential. You know, his tweets are bombastic, and, you know, he says things like bad hombres or whatever he said. Bill Clinton was getting blowjobs in the Oval Office.
Yep.
I didn't even think about this until I saw this meme on Facebook yesterday, and I was talking with my dad about it, and my dad's like, wow, I never thought of that. Bill Clinton was, I mean, he was basically like the Ronald Reagan for Republicans. He was the best Democratic president maybe ever, according to them. And he was presidential. This guy not only got a blowjob in the Oval Office.
And that was one that was consensual. I mean, as opposed to the non-consensual stuff.
Right. Right. No, exactly. I mean, besides the fact that he's a staunch rapist, this guy's getting blowjobs in the Oval Office, like with cigars, and then he lies about it under oath. And then he claims he didn't understand what the definition of sex was. That's presidential. This stupid hick from Arkansas doesn't even understand what oral sex is. I mean, remember that whole line?
I am aware of that. Yeah, you can't make up stuff about the hypocrisy of liberals and the cognitive.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically all I try to do every day is just, if you can poke a hole in like one thing to to an open-minded person, and you can show the hypocrisy of one thing, maybe they get it. And to be honest, I honestly think that's how Trump became president. That there are so many people that are in the middle that, you know, never really were Republicans or Democrats, that just see this endless stream of hypocritical events and say, you know what, this just isn't for me. I mean, even some like reformed liberals are now seeing this. I mean, it's just insanity.
It was not. We were familiar with this when we came up with the title of the show, because we are Shark Nation Radio. There are a lot of sharks in this part of Florida on the coast. But we wanted a fishing term, and backlash is, of course, a fishing term. But it has a meaning, and there is a lot of backlash by people in the middle toward all the excesses of the left. Anyhow, let me get final thoughts from you and remind, and of course at the end, as you know, mention how people can follow you. Any final thoughts on July 4th or in general before I let you go?
July 4th. I mean, the Western world you live in today was basically America. I mean, even if you live in Europe now, what your country is, you know, values and more, I mean, it's from America. And America was an unbelievable, basically an experiment. I mean, it was just people that left Europe looking for freedom and sort of morphed together and founded, I would say, the most influential country in the world, you know, after the Roman Empire. And, you know, I think Trump's slogan actually won him the election. I mean, I honestly don't think if he had a different slogan, he would have won. Make America great again. There's that like nostalgic sort of feeling that people have, especially, you know, older, you know, I'd say like, you know, people over 50 that grew up with, you know, you didn't have to lock your doors and everyone knew their neighbor, and just things were, I mean, America was a great social experiment, and it's basically, you know, being flushed down the toilet. And I think, you know, Trump was basically like a stopgap for these people. Like, they saw, even like that in 2004, we were never really that conservative. We just didn't care. And my dad in like 2004 said to me, we had a baby furniture store in Atlanta, and he said, just these customers suck, all of them. We just came home one night, and it's just one endless stream of just stupid customer after another, and you just that really propelled my family to start caring about these things. And I think Trump is, and on July 4th especially, I mean, he's honoring the military that loves him, and he talks about American greatness, and you basically have Obama going around the country, around the world at the same exact moment, apologizing for America. He just actually said that the biggest danger in America right now is patriotism. And that's crazy. If there's ever a country in the Western world that people should be patriotic about, it's America. And I mean, I moved to Israel by choice, but I had a great time in America. I learned a lot, and it's a great country, and there's a lot of people that are sick of the direction that it's going in, and that's Trump. Trump is basically a referendum on the spinning down the toilet of America, and his slogan on all days, today especially, he wants to make America great again. There's a lot of people out there,
well put.
That want
Finally, how do people follow you, Eliyokim?
Oh, yeah, you can go to facebook.com/Jews News. We're starting a whole series of live videos next month, and basically, it's a like-minded thing to what you're doing. We basically bring out liberal hypocrisy every day. So Jews News on Facebook, and you get to our website from there, and watch my show.
Happy Entebbe. As I let you go,
happy
Entebbe anniversary and happy Independence Day. Eliyokim, it's been great having you on as always.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.